Welcome everyone who's arriving for our Wednesday webinar. We're glad that you're here. As usual, every Wednesday, we invite you to take to the chat waterfall on the side of your screen. Please introduce yourself and where you're from. I appreciate you doing that. Thank you, Kathy, for being first at it today. Well played. All right. Anne is here from Bakersfield, Wesley. Anne is here almost every week. She is faithful and is a dedicated lifelong learner. I so respect that. So got other folks coming in. Great. We're so glad to see you here. Please, in the chat waterfall, register your name and the church you're from. We're so glad that all of you are joining us today. Our numbers are adding up as people come into the room. Welcome to the Wednesday webinar, everyone. As folks come on in the room, we are really glad that you're here. And I hope everyone had a good weekend this last weekend with the 4th of July, such an important time for us in a lot of ways as a nation and as a culture, as we're struggling with so many things right now socially. Holidays like the 4th of July give us an opportunity to kind of look at ourselves in a different light for a moment. And so I am hopeful that you had an opportunity to do that over the weekend. Well, we're glad you're here. We want to get started. My name is Craig Brown. I serve as the Executive Director of Congregational Development for the California Nevada Annual Conference, and am pleased to be your host today. Glad that you're here, and welcome everyone. So if you're just coming in, make sure you post in the chat waterfall who you are and where you're from. You'll notice a little pop-up menu there where you can select either all panelists in that chat window or all panelists and attendees. So if you want everyone else to see what you're writing, you'll change that little pop-up to all panelists and attendees so we can see you. All right, and the last thing I'll say is in the Zoom webinar interface, you'll notice on the bottom center of your window a little button that says Q&A, and later on during our webinar, toward the end, we're gonna have an opportunity for questions and answers with our guest presenter today. I'll introduce to you in just one moment. And if you have a question that comes up during the webinar, go ahead and type it in where it says Q&A. Sometimes we see the questions in the chat window and that's fine, but with the place we're really paying attention to look for questions is that Q&A button in the middle. So if you could hit that button and type in whatever question you have that you want us to address later during that time, it would be very much appreciated. I'm glad again that you're all here. Thank you for posting where you're from, and want to get started this afternoon. We are delighted to have the Reverend Sadie Stone with us as our guest presenter today. We've been working with Sadie to have this particular webinar for weeks, and I want to say that she wins the Flexibility Award. You know, the missing beatitude is blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. And that is the case of Pastor Sadie. She has been very flexible as we've been trying to schedule the different webinars for returning to in-person worship for COVID-19. So her webinar's already been moved around a couple of times. So I'm excited that we finally get to it today because she, in many ways, has a grasp of how we can use social media in the life of our church. That's really, in my experience, unlike so many other clergy that I've ever met, especially me. And I'm that bridge generation. So it's kind of like I'm neither fish nor fowl when it comes to using technology like social media sometimes. So I really respect people that know how to leverage and use this technology to advance their ministry. Pastor Sadie's a graduate of a seminary that you've heard of, but you don't meet many people from, and that's what's exciting too. She's a graduate of Yale for her seminary degree, and so very excited that we have a Yale graduate in our midst today. So if you're a Harvard graduate, just kind of sit down and take a deep breath. It'll be okay. All right, and we're really excited that she is here to lead us today, and just hopeful that you're going to learn some great techniques and tools that she's going to share with you. So Pastor Sadie, welcome. We're glad you're here. A little virtual applause for you. Yay, we're glad you're here. I'm going to turn things over to you to lead us, and I'll be back with the group when we get to our question and answer time.
Great. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to another Wednesday webinar where we are going to be talking about all things social media. So like all things, we are coming from our own contextual places, and I don't know where you all are coming from except for what you've all just put in your chat. I also don't know what background or knowledge you bring with you. So I'm just going to start by kind of talking about more broadly about social media and what it is and how it works, and then talk some more about some practicalities about how to use it. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen so I can show you my slide deck, and then we will go ahead and get started. So you can see my messy background there. All right. So, social media is something, whether you like it or not, that you have to use in ministry. So I'm just going to start by saying that you do not have a choice, in my opinion, about whether or not social media is something that you are going to leverage or be using in your ministry. So today I have 4 goals that I'm hoping to accomplish with all of you. First, I want you to accept that you must embrace social media in your ministry, that this is something that you should learn to love. Whether or not you actually do, you should just pretend that you do. 2, I want to help you feel more confident using social media. And I want to help you begin thinking about using it in a new media in the next few weeks. So I want to help you immediately start using social media as a way to broadening and branching out of your social media, and how we can become more adaptive leaders by doing so. So to start, let me see if I can get this to change pages. What is social media? So on a very practical level, I'm just going to start with a very basic definition of what social media is. Social media, in its simplest terms, are websites and applications that enable people to create and share content in social networking ways. So this could be short videos, it can be pictures, it can be small snippets of words like you would use on Twitter, but it allows for you to display some sort of content in a short way. So these are not blog posts. That allows you to engage with people in some way. So there's some sort of social aspect to it. This also includes Snapchat, where things disappear. And as I mentioned, yes, you should use social media. You do not have an option about whether or not you should use social media. And I say that because this is the way that information is being shared and transmitted right now. And I want to use an example for you at the moment where there was recently an event planned in San Francisco where I serve, and it was all planned by the youth. So people under 18, high schoolers, and they planned a Black Lives Matter rally after the George Floyd murders. And this was all planned by 16, 17-year-olds. The entire event was planned using social media platforms. It was planned, and not even on Facebook. This was planned using solely Instagram, TikTok, and Instagram. So if you wanted to know about what was happening on this event, you had to be on one of those social media platforms in order to get information about how this was being done, where it was happening, who was planning it. And it spread like crazy. And there were 30 or 40,000 people that ended up being at this event from a social media only platform that this was shared. And this did not include Facebook. The other thing that I want to talk about today is, as Craig mentioned, there are generational divides as it relates to social media. Different people of different ages and different generation use different platforms. So that's something we're going to talk about, that there's a generation that uses Facebook. There's a different segment, some overlapping, some not, that uses Instagram. There's another that uses Twitter, others that use TikTok, which is a newer platform. And then, of course, there's Snapchat. And then there's a lot of other things in between, but those are the main ones that I want to look at today. When we're talking about social media, I'm talking about your web presence and how you present yourself on the internet. So, do you have a Facebook profile? Do you have a presence on Instagram? Are you on Twitter? These are all the social media apps that I'm primarily talking about. So let me move on to my next slide. So I want to talk about, as I've already been mentioning, some of the types of social media and the different platforms that there are to use. So as I mentioned, there's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and then there's Snapchat. So Facebook is probably the one that maybe people are most familiar with. And especially now that we are in COVID season, many of us have had, well, all of us have had to transform our ministry into online platforms of some sort. And so Facebook has been a way that many of us have started reaching out to other people. I would say that if your church does not yet have a Facebook account, it needs to get one. I think it's imperative that you have some sort of presence on Facebook. That for many folks, as they're looking for churches, they're looking for a website. And then the next place they're looking is for a Facebook account to see if there's some kind of presence in a social media platform. And Facebook is still one of the most common platforms for social media where you can post videos and other content. Twitter is another platform where you can post short snippets of information, and you can also include photos, but it's mostly a way to transmit short information. So it's called microblogging, and it's 140 characters. And this is really a way to engage in conversation, be a part of other conversations that are happening. And honestly, Twitter is a place that I get a lot of my news and my trying to stay abreast about what's happening in different social justice aspects or different social movements that are happening, or what's happening in the community. If I know that something's happening, I will search for a hashtag, or I'll see what's trending, and I will go on Twitter and look at what the conversation is there. And there are strategic people that I would say that you should try and follow to have an understanding or to stay abreast of what's happening in each of your communities. There are also photo sharing social media sites. This is Snapchat, Instagram, and Pinterest. I would say Instagram and Snapchat are probably the two most common and familiar. And finally, there's the video sharing, which is YouTube, Facebook Live, and TikTok. And TikTok is one of the more controversial things, especially it's come up in the news in the past couple of days about whether the United States is going to continue to allow the platform to exist. But TikTok is a platform that you can create 1-minute videos and content, and it's incredibly popular with the younger generation, so even younger than me. TikTok is a platform that is new for me, but I will say that as a pastor, we constantly have to be willing to adapt and learn about what is happening in the world of social media. That you should never say or refuse to use any content that's out there, because I think when we do that, when we start limiting ourselves or putting up a hard line and saying, oh, I don't do that, I don't use that, we start restricting already where we feel like the gospel message can be shared. And really, I view social networking, I view social media as an opportunity for ministry. I truly, honestly believe that social media is another opportunity for ministry, and that we all need to embrace it and understand that it's another avenue for us to share our ministry, and that all of us are, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment so I can just talk to all of you. And that all of us, when we're on social media, we are presenting an image of ourselves and our church. And I think this is the other thing that's really important to remember, that our very presence on social media is a reflection of our church. It's a reflection of our ministry. So I know that there are some pastors who try to have separate accounts for separate things. And I would argue that that's fine. That's great if you're able to do that. But no matter what, when you put something out on the internet, it's out there forever. So that's wonderful and great, right? We're all recording our sermons now, so everyone can hear them forever, even if they're not our best ones. And the other thing to remember is that we should be strategic always in what we post and how we post it, because we are reflecting our ministries and our churches everywhere that we go. So when I'm thinking about what I'm posting on Facebook or Instagram, I'm always cognitive in the back of my mind that when I post, I am a pastor of Bethany United Methodist Church. And if someone saw that, would I be okay with that being reflected back to who I am as pastor and who I am in ministry of that church? And would I be okay with people understanding that that's a reflection of my church? And it's really hard to separate those things out. So you have to be strategic in what you post and how you post it. So those are kind of a very quick overview of the different platforms, but I would say you need to pick a couple of platforms that your church is going to be engaged in. I don't think you need to do all of them. I think that's a lot. First, especially depending on the community where you're serving, right? All of this is contextual. It may be very possible that the community where you're serving is not that active on Twitter. I still think it's a great place to receive information about what's happening in the world, but it may not be the best place for you to transmit information. Following people there may make more sense than you actually providing content on Twitter. But I do think you need to pick a couple of platforms where your church is going to create profiles and create content, whether this comes from your personal page or it comes from a church page. I also don't think that it needs to come just from the pastor. And especially if you're sitting out there and thinking, I don't know how to use these platforms, I don't know what a TikTok is, I don't want to film myself dancing to a TikTok. There are a lot of really great TikTok memes going on out there where you can, you know, pass a Bible from one person to the next. And there's these really great ways that you can engage youth and young adults, and they know how to do it. So my advice to you is to talk to some of the younger folks in your congregation, because they know how to use these platforms. I have the advantage of having 11-year-old twins in my home who have been editing videos and using all of this stuff since they just use it in school, right? So when we went to COVID online worship, I had never edited a video before until that moment. And my kids had been editing videos in school using iMovie since they were in the second or the third grade. So to them, it's a very easy transition. And so the generation even after me has a very different footprint or language or knowledge around a lot of this. But I want to show you how to create some content, because you might be thinking, well, what do I even put up there? How do I create content? What do people even want to see from me? What am I supposed to put up there? And I will say that one of the best things that I have discovered, and if you don't know about this website, you need to, it's called Canva. And Canva is the best resource that I have found for helping to create content for social media. So I want to go back to screen sharing, and I want to show you a little bit of how I use it and how I use it for creating content for social media purposes in my church. So let me go back to screen sharing. All right, so I think you all can see my screen. And this is Canva. So Canva is a free website, but there is an option to also update to the pro version, which I think is $14 a month. For a long time, I just used the free version. And then when we entered into the shelter in place and all of my ministry suddenly was online, I upgraded to the pro version just because I found I wanted more access to the things that it required. But I want to show you some of the features here. So it has templates, which is great. If you're thinking, I'm not a graphic designer, I don't know how to do a lot of this stuff, they have a ton of templates to choose from. And they're already sized the way that you would need them for the different websites. So this is all the templates for Instagram posts. Here they have templates for Facebook posts, and they're really good about being strategic about what they're showing you on the website. So you're seeing a lot of 4th of July content because it just happened. They also have templates to create logos, any flyers you might need to make, Facebook covers. So on your church Facebook page, one of the things I'm constantly doing on my church's Facebook page is updating our cover picture so that it mirrors what we're doing in worship. So if we have a new sermon series coming up, I will create new Facebook covers based on our sermon series, and I don't have to play around with trying to figure out the right size because they're all right here. You need to make posters. There's other social media. This is just more generally labeled social media presentations, animated social media. So if you want to get really fancy, you can make social media that moves. Instagram stories. So we'll cover Instagram stories in a little bit later. Cards, YouTube channel art, videos, infographics. So basically everything you need to create online content is here already for you, and it makes it so easy to do. And I'm going to just show you some of the things that I have created for my own ministry. So these are some of my Facebook covers that I have used for different sermon series. So we did a sermon series on Barbara Brown book, An Altar to the World. So this was our Facebook cover during those weeks, so that when people came to our Facebook page, they could see what it was we were working on. This was our Pentecost Facebook page cover. So I try to keep it fresh. I try to constantly be updating it. During the month of June was our Pride Month, and this was kind of the theme that we were working with. We were looking at the intersections of Pride and Black Lives Matter and how those things speak to each other. So these are a few of our Facebook covers. And I often will find a template that I like, sort of, and then I will just tear it apart and make it my own. And once you're in this platform, you can add a new page. You can find different, whatever template you want to use. And then the great thing is you can either use pictures they already have on here. You can upload your own pictures, So you can see all these pictures that I have uploaded for various things here, going back here to Advent. And then you can just play around and making it work for what you need it to do for your own context. I have also created things for when I'm trying to advertise education events. So I like to create them in this size because they work well for Instagram, and it also works well for Facebook. So I come on here, I upload the images that I want to do. We're starting a new study using James Cone's book this week. So using this template here, I'm able to create this graphic that I can then plug into our website. I can use it on Instagram. I can share it to Facebook. I can share it to Twitter. And it's one of these things where once you create it, you just have this graphic that can be used in so many different ways. It looks, you just have to play around with it. And I made a couple different versions because I'm always still just working on what works best aesthetically for everything. Let's see what else I've done here. I've created a devotional post, again, for the Barbara Brown Taylor book. Every week I was sending home or posting on Facebook different reflections based on the week before. So one of our weeks was sore muscles and tired feet, and just sort of a brief reflection based on the sermon for someone to reflect on. So again, these are really easy ways for you to be creating content. And this photo here was just a photo that I took from Canva. I didn't find that photo or take that photo. I just borrowed it from Canva because they have a great, you can see some Holy Week things that I've created here. My little COVID informational thing that we all had to do, ways to worship, ways to give. So Kavna, which I probably am saying that wrong. It's one of these things I have a really hard time with saying for whatever reason. It's also a great way if you want to create, if there are quotes, quotes and graphics and very simple things like that are great social media content to be putting out. If you are reading a study or a book together as a church and you want to pull out some of these things. So this is a picture of our church in the background that I turned black and white. So this is Bethany in the background. And then this is a quote from Nadia Bolz-Weber. And this was a postcard that I posted online. And then I also had printed out to give out to people to hang up in their house for the new year as we were talking about resolutions. So this was something I created for January 1st. So again, it's a really easy way to, as you take pictures of your church doing its own work, if you're packing lunches, if that any ministry that's still going on, especially now, is a good way to turn that and translate that into social media. Another thing that I really want to encourage you to think about is always, as you're doing ministry, think about what pictures you should be taking, if there's video you should be taking, and then turning that into some sort of video clip or online clip that can then be translated into social media, especially now that our churches are not gathering in person, or most of our churches are not gathering in person. I know in San Francisco, we are still not able to gather together, and many who are in the vulnerable categories in some of our rural churches are not gathering either. And so social media is another resource for allowing people to stay connected, not only those who are already part of your congregation, but people who are new. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to show you some examples of what I mean by that, but I'm going to talk to you as I search for those examples on my Facebook page, so you don't have to watch me search. But what I mean by this is we have a ministry at Bethany where we are making sack lunches every couple of weeks, and then we are taking them out on the street so that the on-house folks are still getting lunches. Many of the lunch services in San Francisco, or the food programs, had to cease their operations because of COVID. So getting access to food continues to be a struggle in San Francisco, especially now. So as we do those things, I'm constantly thinking there's so few people who actually physically can be there. We have different people making the sandwiches and dropping them off, different people who are able to pack the lunches, but it's not the same kind of in-person ministry where we're all together making the sandwiches, building them as like it used to be. And so what I'm thinking about now is how can I incorporate these ministries in the way that other people can see them still see that we're doing the life of the church even when they physically can't be there. So I've started creating and taking pictures, small snippets of video. We were donated a couple hundred masks to give out to the homeless. So I did a short video of a couple minutes where I prayed and I blessed the masks that I was going to be handing out to the homeless. And I did all of this, one, because I want people in my congregation to know what we're doing. But two, I want people beyond my congregation to know who we are as church. I am always thinking that social media is a way for us to present our best self to the world. And for people who don't regularly go to our church, for them to see a representation of who we are. So when thinking about making short videos, I emphasize the word short. I think you want to do videos that are a minute or two, because the thing about being on social media is that people have a choice and there's a lot happening. So short quotes, short videos that are a minute or two or less. I am a big fan of humor. So again, you know your context the best, but I like to do funny posts. So I'm going to show you a post that we created for Pride that I shared on my social media to invite people to our Pride worship service. And you might see this and be like, that's absurd, Sadie. We would never do that in our church. And I'm not saying that you should do exactly this thing, but I think you should be thinking contextually about who's in your community, who people are, and also people need fun. They need laughter as much as they need the more serious quotes. So I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna introduce you to Pentecost Patty, who my church was introduced to a couple weeks ago. So let me introduce you to Pentecost Patty. Let me stop Pentecost Patty. Pentecost Patty gets a little excited. So I always think that you should be thinking about the ways, and then we had Pentecost Patty the next day read our scripture. So no one really expected to have a mannequin head reading our scripture. But I think that these are interesting ways to leverage your social media, and also for people to kind of be thinking like, what is that about a little bit? You want to keep people a little bit questioning because it engages people. It has people laughing or having them say like, why do you have a mannequin head dancing around? And we have, I have another clip of Pentecost Patty saying, the word of God for the people of God, thanks be to God. And from the social media clip. I also, I encourage you to be creative about what you're doing and help people bring into the spirit of the church. Sometimes people need to hear things from your mouth. After President Trump a few weeks ago said that all churches were going to be back in worship by Memorial Day weekend, I was getting a lot of calls and texts and emails about whether or not we're going to be back in church. And so I made a short social media video about it. It was a minute and a half where I just explained, we're not going back. Here's the reasons why. So sometimes better than an email, it's to put it in a different format and to use the opportunity to use a short video editing clip and things like that so that you can put words and graphics and music behind it. It just makes it a little bit more visually interesting and engages people in a new way. I want to show you another thing that I think can be a way to engage people is also memes. Are people familiar with what memes are? So memes are another one of my favorite social media things, and there's a lot of really funny church related social media memes. There are many that are Methodist specific, there are many that are pastor specific. Since we have a lot of pastors, I'm going to share with you a meme that I found just kind of hilarious about pastoring in the pandemic. So let me go back to my screen share. So I don't know about all of you, but pastoring in a pandemic to me feels like that. It's a lot of pivoting, it's a lot of trying to back up, reverse, change. You sort of feel like you're going to fall off a cliff, and then you don't because you get through it, and it's the next best thing. So there are a ton of different memes. Obviously, that one's more pastor centric and related, but there are a lot of other memes that I find very relatable for people. There are memes that have been created about Jesus and the disciples in the upper room, but transformed into a Zoom meeting, something that people are very relatable to right now. So there's a lot of content that you can use to relate to people about what's happening in the world and engage people in a different way. Because I think so often, when we're in worship, people are used to hearing us talk at them. And email is also a medium in which it's going away, which it's such an antiquated medium. It's funny because, again, talking about my 11-year-old twins, they don't understand they don't understand email, which is super interesting for me. Is they do not understand the concept of email. So when their school pivoted to online learning, all of a sudden they had stuff that was being emailed to them, and they were constantly saying to me, I don't know where I'm supposed to find this stuff. And I said, did you check your email? And they're like, why would I check my email? So again, generationally, you will find that there are generations of people who don't have email, and then you'll find at the other end of the generations people who don't see the utility of email. So what I find especially great about social media is it doesn't have to be long or involved or even a lot of work for you to post something quickly, to post something that's meaningful. A lot of content is already out there. I will say that if you are using somebody else's content, make sure you do the best you can to trace it back to the original source so that you can give credit. I'm a very big advocate of making sure that if you're using other people's resources online or in any format or fashion, that you are giving credit for those things that are not necessarily like public domain. So if you're using somebody else's work, that try to make sure you're linking it back to the original author so that it's always going back to them. But social media is a powerful evangelism tool, and many people actually have found Bethany through the ministry and the work that we have posted online. We have had young adults who have began attending Bethany because of the things like Pentecost Patty, who we post online in relation to Pride, and they look at certain hashtags. So hashtags is something that we haven't talked about much because also hashtags is a generational thing. They serve a purpose and a utility, but they're not something that my kids use a lot, again, in Instagram, but they have a purpose. And so making sure you're strategic about your hashtags and what you're how you're marking your posts so that people can find them. And it's important always that you're being strategic about what you're posting online and what you're doing. And the best part about all of this is if you're thinking, okay, I don't know how to use Instagram, there are tutorials everywhere on the internet that will walk you through how to do this. Or what I have found even better is if you have access to a young person, they seem to intuitively know how to do all of these things. The other part of social media that I want to talk to you about is the opportunity to go live. So on Instagram, we obviously, I think most of us know that you can go live on Facebook, but you can also go live on Instagram. And again, if you're going live on Instagram, I would encourage you to do shorter snippets of things because you lose people's attention. And I do think that the attention span online is something to always be mindful of because people don't have a long attention span. And unlike when people are in our church, I always say to my church people, like, I used to be able to just trap you in the building and you just have to endure whatever I was doing, but now you can just click off. So I have to be better at my job now because I have to keep them online with me. So that's sort of how I am thinking about it now. Is this engaging? Is it provocative? Is someone going to say something? And I do think that you want to be thinking about what's happening in the world. Humor, again, I want to go back to humor all the time. I think humor is so important. And again, you know your context best. So you know your people and you also know the community that you live in. Social media is also a really important and key way to connecting with other people in your community. So the other thing that I have found social media useful for is connecting with other organizations and other people who are living and serving in my community. The other week, so I follow the Coalition on Homelessness on social media. They're a nonprofit in San Francisco who works directly with the unhoused population. They have an Instagram account and they post different things. You know, sometimes it's just memes, sometimes it's content that's about what's happening in the city, meetings that are coming up. The other time there was an Instagram story, which is where you can go and see snippets that are there for just a short period of time. These are often not saved. And there was a request for items that they needed. There was a request for toilet paper, sleeping mats, garbage bags, and this was right towards the start of the pandemic. And within a matter of minutes, I was able to deliver to the Coalition of Homelessness a box of 80 rolls of toilet paper because our church is not in session, so we don't need our toilet paper. Some sleeping pads that we had in the basement of our church that were brand new that we bought to host college groups this year that couldn't come because of COVID. And some garbage sacks that, again, our church is not utilizing in its same way because the building is not open. And so being on social media and having a presence on social media connects your church to other organizations in the city and allows you to build relationships that way. So not only are you connecting with your members, you're connecting with people who are outside your church and you're connecting with other service organizations. So after that meeting with the Coalition on Homelessness, we have now partnered with the Coalition on Homelessness throughout this entire pandemic. And it started because we were able to connect that way through social media. So social media, I just want to reiterate again, you have to be on social media. You have to be. There's just no other way for us to be engaged in a prophetic way about the gospel in this time, especially when people can't go out. And there's so much opportunity. And I would encourage you, if you haven't explored TikTok, if you haven't explored Instagram, if you haven't been on Facebook and really explored what these avenues look like, to do that. Spend some time on TikTok and just Google or like look up the hashtag ministry or look up the hashtag pastor, and you'll see the ways that other people are using these platforms. Ask your youth group if they want to make a TikTok video. All of the children, I promise you, will know what TikTok is, and they will know how to make a TikTok video, and they can teach you how to use it. And you can use it in a strategic way to help your messaging about who you are and the work that you're doing, and really make use of there's so many free resources out there that will help you and teach you to do this. And the other great thing about all of this is you can link your accounts together. So you don't have to be trying to post on Facebook and then be posting on Instagram and then be going to Twitter. You can connect these things so that when you post on Instagram, it automatically posts to Facebook. And you can also schedule these things. So if you spend 1 day a week scheduling some things in advance, it looks like it'll spread it out, because you don't want to be posting 13 things on Monday and then waiting 6 weeks and doing it again. You want the page or your pages to continually be fresh and have content. But you can do it so that you schedule stuff on Monday and it posts throughout the week and you're not tied to it. And you can also make it so it's not just you doing it. This is really a place where you can encourage others in your church to use their creativity, to use the ways that they have pictures. It's a great time to be asking your members. I've been using the opportunity to have members in my congregation send different pictures in based on whatever we're doing in worship, and using those to create different avenues of social media posts or quotes, and things like that, because it's a great opportunity to engage other people. And then they're inclined to go look for it because they were part of the content. They're more inclined to share it because they were part of the creation of the content. So the more people you can get involved, the goal is to get this to be shared and spread so that other people are aware that this is your church, this is who you are, this is what you stand for, and this is the work that you want to do. So as you begin thinking about leveraging your social media, I would encourage you to do an inventory of what social media you already have. So maybe you have a Facebook page already. And one of the things I've found a lot about church Facebook pages is you don't know who has the login information for it. So this is one of those things I would caution you to do, is pick a good email address that lots of people can access, so that when there's transitions, as happens in our Methodist system, that it does not become one of these pages that then it's lost forever. This has been a problem for me in more than one of the churches that I have served. I would look and see if you're using Instagram. I would, if you haven't been on TikTok, it's worth a perusal. It may not be where you want to start. It's an experience. It's an avenue. But I would encourage you to play around and look and start thinking about, okay, what do we want to say this week, or what are we preaching on this week, and how can we start tying our social media in to coincide with that work? Or also, what is the mission work that we are now currently involved in that maybe no one even knows is going on? So many of our churches are doing great work that nobody has any idea that we're doing, because it's all very insider, and our churches have been doing them for years, and the broader community doesn't know. Some of our members may not even know, because that's not the ministry that they're in. And even more so now in COVID, when we are not gathering together. So be thinking about, when you're doing something, can I record a short snippet of this? Can I record 1 minute of saying something about this and throw a photo up with it and post it, so that people know this is my church, this is who I'm doing, and engage with it that way? Is there a quote that I can put up that is meaningful from a study that I'm doing that might encourage people who are outside the church to want to join our studies? Because again, in the world of Zoom, we have this great opportunity to reach a broader amount of people. Anybody can join our studies from anywhere in the world. So this is an opportunity to try to enhance that and really market that to a broader world. So take the inventory of your social media. Is it being active? So how often are you using it? What's being put up there? Is it being updated regularly? Is it fresh? If someone goes to your social media page, can they tell that this is a church that's alive and vibrant and modern and current? Or does it look like somebody made the account and has never returned to it ever again? I think those are important first steps. And then be thinking about, what's the kind of content that we want to create? Do we want to create some, do we want to look for the memes and share those? Do we want to be thinking about some quotes related to the sermons that we're doing or the books that we're reading, and sprinkle those in with reminders of people to join us? So those are the ways that I would start your social media. And I would encourage you to get a team of people to be thinking strategically about this, especially because for so many younger people, this is second nature to them. It's not hard to create this content. It doesn't require a lot of extra time or energy, and there's a lot that they can teach you. So if you're thinking, I don't know how to do all of these things that Pastor Sadie just told me I should do, I promise you that there are people around you that know how to do it. So yeah, that's what I want to leave you with, and maybe we can start doing some of our question and answering now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Pastor Sadie. And I flunk introducing guest speakers because I neglected to tell everyone that you are the pastor at Bethany United Methodist Church in San Francisco. So party foul on the host for not saying where you're actually pastoring. I think people deduced it by now, but that's on me. Sorry, everyone. I'm usually a better host. So we have a few questions, Pastor Sadie, for you to answer or respond to. And I'm just going to kind of roll through them, and feel free to kind of not only address them, but other things that come to mind that you want to add in can be helpful. We have somebody asking, when it comes to some of these memes, where can you find them? And the other question I would put to you in addition to that is that memes are not terribly difficult to make yourself.
Right.
So maybe you could deal with both of those. Where could I find ones that are already in existence, and what's the best way to make a meme?
Yes. So that is the great thing. One, if you just Google like religious memes, or also if you start following certain people, they tend to have memes that are already created. But you can Google memes and religious memes, and you can search through and filter out the ones that are appropriate and not. So use your best judgment there. Again, always using good judgment. The other thing, there are meme creators, and these are some of the best ones that you can do. And again, you can just Google like meme creator, and if you take a picture or you have a funny picture that you've taken, you can create your own memes with, and it can be a way to encourage people to come to your next social event. Again, these are happening online, or it can be a way to invite people to come to an event that's happening. Or yes, so I would encourage you to also be creative about making your own memes. And if you're really lucky, these memes will take off and become viral, and you'll become a viral meme sensation.
Excellent. So to find the places where you can make a meme, it's just as easy as Googling it, meme creator. And I know there's several different places you can do that. So
Yeah. And there are
that's
apps too. There are meme creator apps where you can just plug in your picture, and then it's as easy as putting the little captions on there.
fantastic. Super helpful. We have another question asking a little bit about hashtags and how you use them. So like there's sometimes you make a hashtag, you might be the only person in the world that made that hashtag, and then there's other times you're using a hashtag that's commonly used or is used to connect people. Can you kind of explain through that a little bit how the hashtags work and
Yes.
how you can tell if you've tapped into one that's being used already, or if you've actually created one yourself, which is a good thing and may not be a good thing?
Yes. So hashtags, I love hashtags, but hashtags serve a couple of different purposes. One, hashtags can be a way for people to search a certain content. So if you go on to Twitter, or you go on to Instagram, or you go on to Facebook, and you see a hashtag like hashtag COVID-19, right? If you click on a hashtag COVID-19 and it's a live link, and you click on that, you can see every other post that's public that was ever created using that same hashtag. So in one sense, a hashtag is used to help you filter through and search for items. So that's one function of a hashtag. So if your church has a hashtag and you want to encourage all of your church members who post about your church to use the same hashtag, that would be a way for people to filter through and find items that are specifically for your church. So if I created the hashtag Bethany UMCSF, I would put that in, and then I would search and see if anybody else anywhere in the world was using that hashtag. And you can do that as simply as putting it in the search in Instagram or even in Facebook and Twitter, and seeing what else comes up with that. So if you want to create a unique search for your church because you want it to be unique to what you're doing, you can do that as simple as searching it, creating the hashtag and searching it and seeing what else comes up. It's also sometimes beneficial to use a hashtag like that, but also to be using a hashtag that's fairly popular in the moment. So if you go on Twitter, you can always see on the side what's trending. And the what's trending are the hashtags of what people are talking about in the moment. That's sort of the hot breaking news. And sometimes it's incredibly absurd and obscure. You might see something trending and it'll be like the color orange. And you're like, what are people talking about the color orange for? So sometimes it's obscure. Other times it's news related. George Floyd, would be a hashtag that was trending for a while. Political things trend. Often celebrities who have done something trend. All of those cases where people have been calling the police for no reason, those will often start trending with the hashtag. So they're a way to track posts that are happening about an event that's occurring. And if you want to contribute to those conversations, then you want to use those same hashtags. So when we go to annual conference, at least for people of a certain generation, we're always asking, what is the hashtag for annual conference? So that we can keep an ongoing thread of conversation happening on Twitter about what's happening at annual conference. And this is especially important for general conference. You know, I follow the Twitter thread when we have general conferences happening, because you can see everybody who's at general conference is almost having a separate conference via Twitter, putting insights, copying quotes, having conversations about what's happening where. And the hashtag allows you to filter out everything else and just follow those streams of conversation. Hashtags can also be used to make a point, to add to the hilarity, or to add to the message of what you're trying to say. So you might have had a really hard day, and you might do, you know, oh, I can't, this has been quite the day. And then you might be like, hashtag over it, right? It's just adding to emphasize what the post is about. It's not so much for a search purposes, it's for emphasis purposes, to add to the conversation of the post. So hashtags serve a variety of functions and purposes, and I use them for all of those reasons. Sometimes I use hashtags to add to whatever it is that I'm trying to say in like a funny commentary kind of way. Other times it's, you know, hashtag Bethany, hashtag UMC. And again, I use these strategically. So if someone's looking for a UMC related post that, you know, if they do a hashtag UMC, Bethany's page will come up. Hashtag San Francisco. So if someone's searching for something in San Francisco. Hashtag Noe Valley. That's the neighborhood we're in Noe Valley. Hashtag ministry, hashtag church, right? Anything that I think someone might be searching for that would lead them to my post, I use as many of those hashtags as possible, so that it has a higher chance of somebody happening upon the post that we want to use. And then other times I'm just like hashtag blessed, or, you know, something like that, where it's not really serving any function except to add to the humor or the content of the post itself.
Excellent. Another question about the team that you can build to help with social media. Talk a little bit about how you can build that team. Are you looking for something in particular? I mean, are you looking for people that are using social media all the time to be on the team necessarily? Kind of what does that look like to build a group that can help you with that?
Yeah, so when we are functioning more in person, or even now, if you have someone that you can designate to make sure that pictures are being taken. So one of my big things is that no matter what we are doing, that is being documented in some way. And if obviously if you're working with youth and children, make sure you have permission, or you're not getting faces. You want to make sure you're being careful about that. But I want to make sure that at any event or any activity that we're doing, that there's documentation happening. So you want to have, and if you can, I've been part of churches where there was a church photographer, and this was just someone who it wasn't a paid position, it was more of a volunteer position, but it was the expectation that this person was the documentarian of sorts. And it, you know, with our phones, everybody has access. And then we set up a Google Drive place where people can dump their photos into them. That makes it really easy for sharing purposes. So that's one thing, is I would make sure that you have someone designated at each event who's in charge of documenting, whether it's photos, taking snippets of videos, being really thoughtful and strategic about, okay, this little short clip, or do I need to get someone specifically saying something about this? When we had our meals delivered, we partnered with the San Francisco Night Ministry. So when the pastor from that came and picked up the sack lunches the first time, I did a quick little interview with her on my cell phone out on the sidewalk, and was like, can you tell us what Night Ministry is? Can you tell us where you're taking the sack lunches? Can you tell us what how people on the streets are doing right now in the pandemic? And then I was able to take that content and create a quick little online social media post using it. So also be thinking that way. Is there something where I can just quickly ask members or people who are there a few short questions that can then be edited and condensed down? So I would be thinking about that. I would also make sure that for any of your social media accounts that you have more than one person who has access to them, that there are several people who can post things on your Facebook page or your Instagram page, so it's not within the hands of one person. And then I do think that if you have an administrative person on your staff, that it's becoming more and more vital that that person has the skills to create some of this content, that you can send it to them and say, create a social media post about this. Here's some, here's the picture, here's the content. Can you post this on Instagram? And actually, my church right now is rewriting a job description that's going to be very much web and social media based, so that I can have so that we can have someone on staff who is able to do this as well. And then it's a great way to also engage your youth and your young people. I know that my kids, as we're filming worship, they're all into trying to get me to use different camera angles. My son wants me to set up 4 cameras so that we can get angles from all sides. This is way more work than I have the energy for, but he's very knowledgeable about stuff that I don't even know where he got the knowledge. He just seems to intuitively know how to do it. So it's also another way to engage some of your young people. If you even now can send them or say, hey, can the youth create something about this? I think you'd be amazed about that. But for sure, make sure someone's always documenting, and then have a few strategic people who have access to your page. And I would find people who are competent enough to understand the basic format of how to use it.
Very good, very good. A couple questions about some social media platforms. It seems that from time to time, people kind of get their accounts hacked or spoofed or some other way. Do you have just some easy steps that people could take in social media for their church or their own personal account to kind of secure that or lock that down so they have less of that kind of a problem?
Yeah, so I will say that it happens. You have to be you have to be monitoring the accounts, and this is where it's beneficial to have multiple people. We at Bethany have never had anybody sort of hack our account, but we have had trolls trolling our account. We're a reconciling church, and so we've had a lot of really unfortunate trolling. And I don't know if people know what I mean by trolling, but people who come on and write really hateful things about the reconciling aspect of our church. And part of that is just monitoring. We screenshot and we block very liberally. We do not engage with people who want to engage in who post hateful things. We are not a space where all opinions are welcome. If it's hateful, we just block it and delete it. We're not trying to engage in a debate. You also want to think about the purpose of each social media site, right? You might have one that's just for members. So that one could be more locked down and private, that you just have members who are a part of it. So if you might have different strategic purposes and reasons for your different social media accounts. So all of them may not be public. Some of them might be private, and there might be strategic reasons for that. Others you will have that will be more public, and I would say use strong passwords. You don't want to be using your church address. You don't want to be using John Wesley, I love John Wesley. You don't want to be using those sort of passwords. Use strong passwords, update them regularly, and just know that it will happen, but just stay on top of your social media. That's part of being active on it and staying aware of it.
Excellent. A couple more questions. This is a great question from JB Brayfindley. If you are running multiple social media platforms, do you put content on them redundantly? In other words, you put the same thing on all of them at the same time, or do you use the different platforms for different types of things so they're not necessarily always showing the same content?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I would say it depends. Sometimes it's redundant for me. So if I am posting something where I want people to attend my study on James Cone's book, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, which we're starting that study tonight, I post that incredibly redundantly because I want as many people to see it as possible. And different people use different sites, as I mentioned, that not everybody is on the same sites. My folks who are on Facebook are often not the same folks who are on Instagram, and are not the same folks who are on Twitter. So I find value in posting redundantly because it's not the same audience. And I'm also not only trying to talk to my own members who are already there, I'm trying to also reach people who are not already part of the fold, right? It's an evangelistic tool as well. And what I have found in churches throughout time is that you can almost never say anything enough times, because it doesn't matter if you say it, post it, sing it, send a postcard, put in the newsletter, send a telegram, people will still be like, wait, what's happening? So I find redundancy is useful. There are some things, though, that don't work on every platform, right? So Instagram, you can post videos to Instagram, but shorter videos are better on Instagram, no longer than a minute, or else it takes you to a different, almost to a different platform to finish watching the video. So if I have a video that's 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, I mostly leave that to Instagram, where I probably wouldn't post that or I post that to Facebook, not sorry, getting all my platforms mixed up. If I'm posting something to Twitter, it's so short that probably, it would be like just a Twitter thing. So not everything translates to every site, but if it does, I definitely post it everywhere because it's just different audiences.
Cool. We have time for just 2 more quick questions I hope you can speak to. The first one is, do you have any kind of process for, privacy issues around photos and videos of people, or the release forms people do, or do you post some kind of disclaimer somewhere that their image could appear online?
Yeah. So especially when working with youth or children, we have waivers that they fill out that say, yes, I give permission for my child's image to be used. I'm very careful that we don't use the names of the children in our church, especially their full name, if we don't have permission for that, or even if we do. I mostly never, except for my own children, I get to make those decisions. But I try not to post even their full names, although it's not a secret. So it's hard when you're clergy, like your children just are sort of public figures by virtue of being related to you. But yes, you want to make sure you have a waiver, especially for people who are underage, because if you have children in your congregation who are part of foster care, they cannot be photographed. If there are custody things going on, you do not want to put anybody at risk. If there are immigration questions going on, you for sure want to do that. You also, as we move into this stage where, as we move back into in-person worship, and we may still, probably most of us should be still live streaming our worships, you want to make sure that people know that stuff is being live streamed, and that there's a section where people can sit that they will not be caught in the live stream, or they will not be caught on photos. And then also, especially around things like Pride, where people may not be out or fully out. So yes, you want to get permission from people before you're just publicly sharing images out there. I think it's very, very important that you're respecting the autonomy of people, and you're respecting their ability to have ownership over their rights. So there's also something about being strategic about how you're taking pictures, right? You can take a great photo that maybe doesn't show any specifics of who the people are, like a shot from behind of your full sanctuary, a shot from the side. If you look on Bethany's Facebook page, you'll see that any of the pictures we have posted of children, they're very strategic, the ones we've chosen, because you can't see any of their faces, but you can definitely tell children are there, right? There's a balloon that happens to be in their face, or there's an arm strategically placed. So I would definitely have waivers for children and youth always. That should just be part of your standard Sunday school registration. You should let people know that things are being live streamed. You should have a place where people can sit, where they can opt out of ever being shown on film or camera. And then, you should make sure people know, like, we're taking pictures. Some of these things may be on social media. If you have a reason for the adults, if you have a reason, let's have a conversation about that. But consent is very important.
Cool. Excellent. And last, do you use Nextdoor at all?
Yeah. So I do use Nextdoor. It's a special place, Nextdoor. I find that I have to be very patient on Nextdoor, because there's a lot of stuff that makes me angry on Nextdoor, and I'm still a pastor on Nextdoor, and these are literally my neighbors. But yes, I find Nextdoor has been a great place to post about what's happening at the church. And we had a knitting group, and our knitting group grew to 10, 15 people. None of them were church people. They were all neighbor people who started attending our knitting group because it was posted on Nextdoor, and our concert series. So yes, Nextdoor is a very is a great place to connect with the people who are immediately around you. Again, I would just caution you that there are things that will make you angry on Nextdoor, and you have to remember, you are the pastor, these are your neighbors. What you say is out there. So, be careful. Be careful.
Indeed. Good word, Pastor Sadie. Want to thank you so much for leading us today and facilitating good conversation. I want to thank all of you who posted into the chat waterfall. Sometimes folks put questions in the waterfall and folks have answers or practices they keep, and so it becomes a place of collaboration. So I'm so thankful for all of you engaging today. And as we get ready to wrap up here in the next few minutes, I want to again give some virtual applause to Pastor Sadie Stone from Bethany United Methodist Church in San Francisco. Well done, well done, well done. And I'm going to turn things over to our Director of Communications, Selby Ewing.
Greetings, friends. Thank you, Sadie, for a wonderful session on social media best practices. I know we're all learning together, and there are lots of different ways to do things, and you really presented a wealth of information in a very short amount of time. So thank you so much. I want to just thank everybody for attending and ask you again to please think about the stories of ministry happening in your community. I'd love to let everybody across our California, Nevada connection know about them, so please send them in to me. And I would also like to take this moment to bring extended virtual greetings from Bishop Minerva Carcano, who joined the webinar today. And Bishop says, "Good to be with all of you, friends. What a great webinar. I learned so much. So grateful for Reverend Sadie Stone and her amazing skills and learnings and her willingness to share it with all of us. I love the fact that she is so clear about the fact that social media is a critical tool for evangelism for the church in the 21st century. God bless you, God bless you, Pastor Sadie, and all of you gathered here for the webinar. Stay safe and be well. God is with us. Craig?
All right. Thank you very much, Selby, and glad to hear words of greeting from the bishop. Again, thanks to Pastor Sadie, and especially for the delays that we've had getting to today. It was well worth it in every way. Thank you so much for bringing such great leadership to us. We are getting ready for the Wednesday webinar next week, and normally right now is when I tell you what the Wednesday webinar is for next week, but I'm not. And I'll just let you fill in the gaps there. We're working on it, and we're going to have something good ready for next Wednesday, and I hope that you tune in. You'll be getting some email blasts hopefully in the next day or so to let you know what the Wednesday webinars are. As of right now, we're really working on the Wednesday webinars to carry us at least through annual conference in September. So you can anticipate there being something every single Wednesday between now and then. That's our plan as we move forward, as we head to annual conference. And so we have a great team working on that, not only kind of my partner in this, the Selby, technical support from Tua Yang, of course, in the background, and then our new Director of Leadership Development, Reggie Nichols, who we introduced to you last week, and he's going to be taking a leadership role in these Wednesday webinars coming up. And so I'm excited. We're going to be getting him more and more integrated into leadership and helping us plan out where we're going in the future. So I'm excited about that. So for now, I want to thank you all for being with us on this Wednesday. I just pray that this is a fruitful remainder of the week for you as you look forward to this opportunity to gather for worship again this weekend. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Wednesday in our Wednesday webinar. God bless and take care. Bye-bye.